Captain Zuri stepped off the bus and felt the dust of Mbala cling to her boots. She had been away for months, sleeping in bunkers, eating far-off food, counting down visits home. Today she wanted nothing fancy, just the door to open to the small normal she had left. Before she turned the key she put her phone in her palm and pressed record, not to catch a speech or a parade, but to hold a simple, honest moment. The door eased open and light fell across the living room. Kofi was on the sofa with Amina, laughing like a private joke had turned the whole room soft. The sound hit her like cold water. Time slowed. Her breath kept steady. She did not shout. She did not slam the door. She stood very still, the red record dot ticking on the screen, and watched them from the threshold. Kofi looked up, surprised, then smiled in the way men do when they think everything is fine. Amina froze, her smile wobbling. Zuri felt a furious calm gather in her chest. The little red light captured every tilt of the head, every soft touch. Her silence filled the house until it felt loud enough to split glass. She stepped back, closed the door, and walked away with the recording in her pocket, a small, cold thing that would not let the town forget. She kept walking as if nothing had happened, but already the small file was a seed that would wake the town. Zuri locked the guesthouse door behind her and sat on the narrow bed with the phone heavy in her hand. The screen glowed where the little red dot still burned. She pressed play and the room filled with soft sounds she had not meant to hear. Kofi and Amina were close, the kind of close that was not for family. There were quick kisses, quiet laughter, and a whisper about plans that sounded like promises. Zuri watched without making a sound. She felt her face go cold, then hot, then empty. Anger rose and fell like a tide, but she did not let it wash her away. She had the recording and she had a choice. If she acted on feeling alone, she knew she might lose more than he had already taken. So she made a different plan. She copied the file to a small, private server she rented under a fake name. She made a short clip, only 10 seconds, the part where Kofi's hand brushed Amina's neck, and she labeled it with a simple date and place. She did not flood social feeds that night. Instead she sent the clip to a handful of people who mattered in Mbala, people who could make the town look twice and ask questions. She messaged Dada the market vendor with a line that would start a whisper. She left an anonymous note at the barbershop. She let the teaser live like a buried seed in the town's ear. Behind the scenes she made notes, saved bank messages, watched Kofi's accounts, and quietly asked questions about his business moves. Every move she made was quiet and careful, not to wreck herself but to build a case. She imagined the timing, not cruelly but like a surgeon choosing when to cut. There was a legal path and there was a social one. She prepared both. She thought of the magistrate in Bantu and the way public proof could force a problem into a courtroom. She thought of her own name and how a slow, steady reveal would protect it more than a sudden scream. At night she watched the clips until they blurred, and in the morning she checked the server to make sure nothing had leaked. The short teaser did its work. People in Alumide began to whisper. Kofi grew cautious. He checked his phone more often and smiled less at the market. Small cracks appeared in his bravado. The town paid attention to the idea of betrayal even before they saw the full truth. Zuri felt a strange calm as the plan moved forward, a hard, clear calm that came from moving with care. She was not acting from spite. She was building something that could not be taken back, a careful proof that would not only hurt Kofi but might also open a way to real justice. Zuri walked into the market like any other woman buying food, but she was watching the town through Dada's eyes. Dada stood behind her stall with a knowing nod. He had been her friend for years and she had taught him exactly what to say. Not lies, just questions. He would ask about time and place. He would mention a short clip that someone had seen. He would laugh and then change the subject as if it were nothing. Those small moves were easy for Dada. He already knew everyone's business and people trusted him because he sold good tomatoes and never gossiped loudly. The gossip began like steam from a pot. One person said he had seen Kofi looking worried while buying hair oil. Another said Kofi had left a meeting early and smelled like perfume. Word traveled faster than truth. At the barbershop, where men sat and talked about cricket and crops, someone dropped Dada's line. Kofi was there, laughing with the barber, but his hands trembled when he reached for the razor. He laughed too loud, answered questions too fast, and checked his phone when no one else did. People noticed. Small shops that had once welcomed him now watched his face and whispered among themselves. The baker stopped giving him credit. The mechanic asked for cash only. Zuri listened from a distance, careful not to be seen. It was important that the town thought the story belonged to them. She had not told anyone to hate Kofi. She only wanted the town to ask questions. That was safer and stronger than a single angry scene. The rumor took on a life of its own. Mothers told daughters not to let men wander. Boys joked about loyalty and shame. Even children in school used the rumor as a secret game. Kofi walked through the market as if nothing had happened, but his shoulders were lower. He stopped going to the barbershop at midday and sent his driver instead. He argued with suppliers over small bills and then paid with trembling hands. His business partners began to call and ask pointed questions. A client who once praised him now said she needed time to think. Zuri watched all of this and felt a mix of sorrow and relief. She did not enjoy seeing Kofi fall into fear. She had loved him once. But she had to be practical. The leaks that Dada made were small and careful. They created pressure, not mobs. They reminded people that actions have consequences. In kitchens and courtyards, a gossip became a doubt, and doubt became a weight that sat on Kofi's chest. The town did not yet know the whole truth, only the shape of it. That shape was enough to crack his loud bravado and make him look for cover, while Zuri waited, steady and patient, letting the town's whispers do the work she could not do alone. The Sunday lunch at Adawa began like any other, with plates steaming and the house full of easy talk, but Zuri stepped in with a calm that made the noise shrink. She had on a plain dress and carried only her phone, the same small thing that now felt heavier than any piece of metal. Kofi sat at the head of the table trying to keep his face steady, Amina next to him smiling as if nothing had changed, and the rest of the family moved around them, unaware that the air had shifted. Zuri did not raise her voice or make a scene. She took a seat like someone joining a normal meal, placed the phone on the table, and with a quiet hand hit play. For a few seconds the sound was low, like a radio turned down, then the clip filled the room, a quick touch, the hush of a laugh behind closed doors, a promise made in a voice that did not belong at a family table. At once the room stopped. Forks paused halfway to mouths. A spoon fell and rolled across the tablecloth with a small, bright sound that seemed to echo. Kofi's smile vanished so fast he looked older. Amina's color drained, her lips breaking into a smile that was all muscles and no warmth, and then she could not hold it. Her eyes went wide and she looked at Kofi as if he had changed into someone else right before her. The older men leaned back slowly, confusion written in the throw of their shoulders. Mothers put a hand to their chests. The children, sensing something like lightning, huddled closer and stared. Someone whispered, and the whisper made the word betrayal hang in the doorway. Kofi reached for the phone as if to stop the picture, but Zuri moved first and set her palm down on the device, steady and sure. She did not shout at him. She did not beg. She only let the proof speak. The clip showed what words alone could not prove, and proof is a sharp thing in a place that values face and family. Faces that had been warm turned cold in the space of a breath. Questions rose like a tide and had nowhere to go. Kofi stammered, then tried to explain, then tried to laugh, but every sound fell flat where the recording had laid down truth. A cousin began to cry. An uncle stood up, his chair scraping hard against the floor. The silence that followed was full of small, dangerous noises, the clink of glasses, the hum of a distant radio, the sudden, awkward shuffle of feet. Amina covered her mouth and could not look at Zuri. The family altar, a place of blessing and shared meals, became the scene of the unmasking. In that stunned room, nothing was the same. Zuri sat very still and watched the cracks form, knowing that a single small screen had broken a house of many faces and that the world they all knew would have to be rebuilt around the truth. The full recording did not stay small for long. Someone with access leaked it, and a local influencer picked it up and posted the clip with the simple tag #MbalaTruth. The phone buzzed like a hive across the town. People watched the video again and again, then shared it, and the shares spread beyond Mbala to nearby towns by the next morning. In kitchens, at barber chairs, and on buses, the clip was the first thing people talked about. Screenshots of Kofi's face at different moments began to travel, and the short, sharp sound of the recording played in the heads of anyone who had once trusted him. Business partners called, but their words were polite and empty. Meetings were postponed. Contracts that had been signed with a handshake suddenly had lawyers on the line. Suppliers asked for cash up front. Amina's fiancé, who had planned a wedding, stepped back and said he needed time. His family worried about honor and pressure and quietly told him the match could not stand. The couple's alliances, once steady and full of borrowed smiles, cracked like old plaster. People who had sat at the same table now clicked unfollow and blocked phone numbers. Messages arrived in waves, some begging for explanations, some full of anger, and some that were cheap shots of cruelty. Kofi tried to call and text, begging for trust, offering explanations that nobody wanted to hear. He sent flowers that wilted before they reached the house. He met with a friend who told him to lay low. The friend's pity came with a warning. Even his uncle, a man who had always shielded him, kept his distance and muttered that face matters in town. Amina was flooded with calls, many cruel, some sympathetic, and her fiancé's family said they could not marry into a scandal. The small businesses that had backed Kofi hesitated and then pulled away. Cash flow dried, bills piled, and people who had once smiled at him in the market now crossed the street to avoid him. The scandal made old debt seem larger and new problems multiply. At night, Kofi sat in the dark and watched the ways his life narrowed. Zuri watched the spread like a slow fire, not celebrating the harm but noting the effect. The town's eye had turned full on their small household and would not look away. What started as a private betrayal was now a public stain that touched work, friendships, and future plans. The recording had become a public truth that moved faster than apologies and louder than any explanation. In the space opened by that one posted clip, alliances fell apart, plans were cancelled, and lives changed in ways that could not simply be put back together again. Kofi tried to buy silence with quick money and softer words, but Zuri had already learned that apology could not erase what she had seen. He came to the house twice, offering cash and promises, his voice full of panic. He called at odd hours and left messages that begged for forgiveness. When that failed, he grew desperate and tried to make small deals with people who still might protect him. Zuri listened without answering. She wanted the truth to be what it was, not softened by bribes or excuses. Then Nneka, Kofi's sister, came to her with an envelope and a look that made Zuri sit down. Nneka had always been quiet in the family, the one who handled bills and letters. When she opened the envelope, she let out a single slow breath and pushed a stack of papers across the table. There were bank statements, transfer receipts, and contracts that did not match the stories Kofi had told. The numbers spoke in a language that could be read by anyone who cared to look. Nneka did not blame Zuri. She said she was tired of secrets, tired of a life built on lies. Her voice shook when she said she wanted what was right, not just for Zuri but for the people Kofi had hurt with his schemes. Together they made a careful list. Zuri wrote down dates, saved copies of messages, and organized the clip with timestamps. Nneka added pages from ledgers and proof of payment that showed money moving where it should not. They walked into the magistrate's office in Bantu with a quiet seriousness, not loud anger. The magistrate read the files and listened as Zuri played the full recording in the small, serious room. The judge's face was unreadable at first, then tight. The recording, matched with the documents, made a story no longer private. It suggested fraud and theft as well as betrayal. The magistrate asked questions that cut through excuses and set a legal path forward. Kofi's attempts to smooth things over now looked like obstruction. People who had once shrugged now watched the case change shape from domestic trouble to criminal matter. News moved slowly to the court clerk and then faster as others who had lost money came forward, their own small papers joining the pile. Zuri felt a heavy relief, because this was not only about shame. It was about responsibility. Nneka stayed by her side at every hearing, her presence an unexpected kind of forgiveness and an admission that family can choose truth over silence. Together they turned a private wound into a claim the law could hold. The threat to Kofi's freedom made the town realize the cost of lies, and gave Zuri a steadier place from which to rebuild. The courtroom in Bantu was packed that morning. News of the case had spread far beyond Mbala, and people filled the benches until the guards had to turn some away at the door. Zuri sat straight, her hands folded in her lap, calm on the outside though her heart beat fast. Across from her, Kofi wore a suit too sharp for the moment, forcing a smile as if he still believed charm could erase proof. Amina sat behind him, her face hidden under a scarf, trying not to be recognized. When the magistrate called for evidence, Zuri stood and placed her phone on the desk. The room grew quiet. She pressed play, and the recording that had once been private filled the space. The voices of Kofi and Amina, soft and guilty, echoed off the wooden walls. People shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, others covering their mouths. The whispers rose like a tide, but the magistrate lifted a hand and they fell back into silence. Then Zuri presented the documents. One by one, the papers showed bank transfers, hidden accounts, and names of businesses tied to Kofi's schemes. Each page was like a nail hammered into the coffin of his excuses. His lawyer tried to object, but the magistrate only asked for clarity, and Zuri answered with calm precision. Kofi's face, once full of bravado, began to fold. His smile vanished, his eyes darted, and sweat shone on his forehead. The public gallery gasped as the story became larger than love and betrayal. It was theft, lies, and money taken from people who trusted him. Amina suddenly stood, her chair scraping back, and ran out of the room without looking at anyone. Her departure sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. The magistrate's voice cut through the noise, strong and final. The ruling was clear, there was enough evidence to move forward with criminal charges. Guards stepped toward Kofi, and the sound of handcuffs clicking shut was sharp in the quiet hall. He looked around the room, but no one met his eyes. His head lowered, his shoulders slumped, and the smugness that had once carried him through markets and meetings was gone. The people of Mbala sat frozen, watching the man they had once respected let out like a common thief. Zuri stayed still, her phone back in her hand, her face unreadable. She did not cheer. She did not cry. She only let the moment stand as it was, the truth laid bare, the lies undone, and the man who thought himself untouchable now walking out under the weight of his own choices while the town bore witness. Months after the courtroom, Zuri stood in the cool morning light of Sankara and looked at a small building that hummed with promise. The sign above the door read Veterans Reintegration Center, but inside it would be more than a sign. She had used the noise of the viral video and the attention it brought to build something that could help others find steady ground. People came to the ribbon cutting from Mbala and from towns beyond. Some came to thank her. Some came to watch and to see what a woman could do after a truth had been shouted into the open. She spoke plainly to the crowd about the hard parts of coming back from war and the quiet pain of betrayal. She did not ask for pity. She asked for care. She told a few short stories of veterans who struggled with money, with anger, and with the feeling of being left alone. She talked about skills, jobs, and a place to sit and be heard. The applause was warm but not loud. Zuri cut the ribbon with steady hands and walked inside to meet people who needed jobs and people who needed a listening ear. News clips played on a small TV in the reception and showed faces from the scandal, but here the cameras felt smaller, like tools rather than weapons. Nneka stood beside her, not as a shadow but as a partner who had chosen truth over family silence. Dada came with a basket of fruit and a smile that said the market still trusted her. The center filled with quiet activity, a class for resume writing, a table where veterans could learn to plant and sell vegetables, a small office where advice on money matters was given. Zuri looked at the faces around her. Some still remembered the scandal and the courtroom. Most were ready to look forward. She felt tired and steady at once. The video that had once torn her life open had also opened a door. In that room she found purpose and a kind of peace. She had turned a painful story into work that mattered. One recorded truth had toppled lies and, in time, helped build a place where people could begin again.